Hi, welcome to the first video in the sound control course for audio mastering, where over the next 12 weeks we are going to be demystifying the art and the science of mastering, exploring its role within the music production chain, as well as giving you the tools you need to make much better sounding music, which is why we're all here at the end of the day. For decades, mastering has been known as a dark art, something shrouded in mystery and more often than not completely misunderstood. And I think a big part of that is the simplicity of what mastering is, mixed with the complexity of the program dependency of the process, meaning from one track to another, the requirements of the processing that you're going to be applying is very different. There isn't one trick that fits all, that works on everything. As an example, have you ever watched a tutorial on YouTube or anywhere else for that matter that promises that this one trick is all you need to turn your mixes into pro sounding mixes, and you apply it to one song and maybe it works, apply it to another song and it's okay, it doesn't work as well, and before you know it, it's making your mixes sound 10 times worse? Well, this is exactly the thing that I want to cover with this course. Rather than providing a technique or a trick or a process that you apply to everything, this is about giving you a much deeper understanding of the perception of sound and the integration of processing for specific problems on specific songs. Every song is different, and just using one processing chain on everything is more often than not going to cause a lot more troubles than it's going to fix. So I've designed this course to help with exactly that, giving you a deeper understanding of how to critically listen, how to hear for problems, and more importantly, how to fix them. So let's get it on. Before we start getting lost in all of the magic and the techniques, I think it's important to go over some historical and contextual information about mastering that's going to give you a much better understanding of the process. So let's start with a basic definition. Mastering is the key link in the supply chain of your music. It's the funnel point between the creative process and the commercial process of getting your music out to the world. Whether you're using your own limiting on your project, simple mastering chain within the mix itself, whether you're sending it to a pro engineer, or even if you're leaving your mix untouched, there is a process between finishing your mix and sending it off to manufacturing or distribution that all music must go through in order to make sure that it will, at the very least, play back properly on the chosen formats that you're releasing on, but more importantly, sound good on all of the playback systems that it's going to be listened on, which is a lot more systems these days than historically. But that's essentially all mastering is. You can apply 1,000 techniques or you can apply one technique. The principle is the same. It's a quality control and a transfer process from your finished mix to your desired formats. Historically, mastering began because getting your song to sound good on vinyl, which was the first format that required any kind of processing to the mix, was not as simple as just sending it over. Here's the mix, cut it to vinyl. There are certain limitations, physical limitations with the format itself that made it more difficult to transfer the song to the format. As we've developed over the years, the formats have changed, the limitations with each specific format has changed, but as a result, the processing has changed, and this has evolved what mastering has become But these limitations over time have evolved mastering into something that's almost unrecognizable from what it was at the beginning, but at its core and at its principle, it still remains the same. A transfer process between your finished mix and the listening audience. The role of mastering was changed most dramatically during the introduction of digital streaming and what's now still known today as the Loudness Wars. During the 70s and 80s, and there were seeds of it in the 60s as well, but predominantly in the 70s and 80s, artists sought to have their music appear louder than the next artist on the radio, because it was noticed that the louder a song was, the more exciting it appeared, the more interest it garnered, and ultimately the more sales that came to it. This trend reached a critical mass in the 1990s and 2000s when loudness became an obsession, and many tracks ended up being pushed to the brink of distortion. In recent years, streaming services have tried to mitigate this problem by introducing volume normalization, and whilst for a short time that appeared to do something towards getting people back to the quality of the music as opposed to the loudness, it's instead fueled a new fire for even more loudness. People are still chasing loudness over quality. So this aspect of loudness has played a key role, as well as the physical limitations of the formats themselves, be it streaming services or physical formats, in how mastering is applied and how the techniques have evolved and developed over time. So bearing in mind that the streaming services now are the dominant way that we consume music, and that they all more or less use normalization in their playback, it could be argued that the mastering process is almost redundant, because all songs will be played back at the same level, so there's no need to get a better sound. However, that race for loudness has been escalated by that. It has not been settled by any stretch of the imagination. It's almost more chaotic now than ever before. So the mastering process, the role of mastering, is even more important now. The number of playback systems that we have now, people listen on their phones, on their laptops, in earbuds, high quality headphones, studio monitors, car speakers. Some people even listen on hi-fis, although I think that's getting more rare now. But the thing is, they're all predominantly listening through a service like Spotify. So that normalization, you need to make sure that your song sounds as good as it possibly can after it's been compressed into an MP3, after it's been turned down by however many dBs through the normalization process. So this makes mastering a critical point in quality control before your tracks reach the listening public. So we can think of mastering exactly as that quality control check before it reaches the wider world. Any issues that are going to be affected by the codec compression, by the normalization, need to be checked and fixed at this point, whether it's over compression, not enough compression, sibilance, too much bass, not enough bass, too much top end, not enough top end. These kind of errors need to be resolved at this quality control check, as well as any kind of accentuation that can help improve the sound of your track once it's been through these kind of codec compressors. And of course, if it's being played on physical formats, it needs to make sure that it sounds as good as it possibly can across all of them. But remember that mastering, it's not a magic fix-all. It's a process of transferring your final mix to the service or the format that it's going to be listened on. So the magic really is in the mix. We can accentuate what's there in the mix, and to some degree we can fix problems, but it's about accentuating what's there in the mix, not taking it in a completely different direction. And fixing things in the mastering often leads to more problems than it resolves. So this is why mixing and mastering are complementary processes that work hand in hand together to get the best out of your music. One of the most interesting factors of mastering is the psychological component. The way we perceive sound changes based on context. Our brains are constantly comparing what we hear now to what we've heard before. This is why good only sounds great until you hear what better sounds like. Throughout this course, we'll explore the psychological aspect and how it can help improve our mastering decisions and ultimately get a much better sound out of the music, even if it is being normalized, how we can get it standing out, sounding even better than the songs being played next to it. So in this course, we're going to break down a lot of different things that work hand in hand together. It's not just about the processing that we apply, that will come in and be an important part of it, but it's about how we listen and how we hear and how we perceive sound, how that plays into the decision making within the mastering process, how we decide whether it sounds good enough, if it sounds great, if there's problems, and how we're going to fix them. By the end of the course, you're going to have a much deeper understanding of all of this, and it's going to make your decision making at the mastering stage far easier to get through and far clearer, and your songs are going to sound much fatter.